When the bones are good.
When the bones are good, the rest don't matter. Yeah, the pain could peel, glass could shatter. Let it rain, 'cause you and I remain the same.
Do you think Maren Morris was singing about cannibals?
She could have been. She was ahead of her time. Look at her go.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ride Home Podcast. My name is Abby.
Hey, guys, it's Caitlin.
If you hear a dog panting, it is because we saw this movie over the weekend, actually.
Yes.
And we weren't able to record on the ride home. So we are now recording in our room, and our sweet, sweet puppy, Ella, is just beside herself that we turned off the air conditioning.
She hates it. She really is very not able to tolerate any amount of heat.
Also, she doesn't tolerate us speaking.
She hates us talking.
Especially past like a certain time of day. She's just done.
But like, why is she me?
She is a little bit. I mean, she's a Capricorn.
Yeah.
So I feel like people adopt dogs that are them.
Mm-hmm.
So we are at home and very excited to talk about Luca Guadagnino's newest movie, Bones and All.
I'm so excited to talk about this movie.
So he was the director of Call Me By Your Name,
Mm-hmm.
which is a slightly controversial film because it
is.
represents a love story between a minor and an adult.
Yeah, it's touch of pedophilia.
Just a dab.
Mm-hmm.
Although it was controversial, I think we both enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
that movie. And both of us are fans of Timothée Chalamet, is what we lovingly refer to.
We just call him Shablagook, which is my favorite thing.
It's out of love, though.
It is. Like, he's just Shablagook. I don't know.
He's just Shablagook. But we are big fans of him.
Mm-hmm.
I think you a little bit more than me.
Yeah, I'm like a little bit obsessed with him.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a healthy obsession.
It's
not like you don't have posters of him.
No. No, like he's never
imagine?
been like my phone background.
Right.
Like he's just beautiful. And
Yeah.
I love watching him act.
I had a little bit of a struggle because this is the first movie I've seen him in since Sex Life of College Girls came out. And so I had a little bit of a struggle because I just kept picturing his sister Pauline, who like is Timothée Chalamet with boobs. And so
Yeah.
like I was just having some struggles
You were
there.
struggling with it.
I also struggle when I watch Sex Life of College Girls because I'm like, wait,
It's
just
Shablagook.
it's just
with boobs.
Shablagook with boobs.
Yeah.
By the way, if you haven't watched that,
Oh my
fantastic
God.
series on HBO.
Yes.
So I will read the Google summary as we always do.
Let's hear it.
Love blossoms between a young woman on the margins of society and a disenfranchised drifter as they embark on a 3,000-mile odyssey through the backroads of America. However, despite their best efforts, all roads lead back to their terrifying pasts and a final stand that will determine whether their love can survive their differences. Very interesting.
Very interesting synopsis. Okay.
So what the synopsis leaves out is probably the most important thing, which like if you just read that synopsis and you were like a good Christian woman, you might be like, oh, let's go see the
love
film.
story.
It's about cannibals. So
Right.
we're just going to put that on the table right now, that Timothée
Yeah.
Chalamet and Taylor Russell are cannibals. We will get into that a little bit more.
Right.
But we're just going to start out as we always do and just say, Caitlin, what are your thoughts and feelings a couple of days later? Not right out of the theater this time.
Not right after the theater. And I have to say, I'm extremely happy that I had a few days to sit on this movie and to process it.
It was a big one.
It was heavy. There was a lot to process.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit more equipped to discuss it, having had a little bit of time to process and think about it. So my initial thoughts for the sake of this podcast, because we actually really haven't talked about it.
No, and we've been like dying on the inside because we've been
know.
wanting to talk about it.
And every day I think about another thing that I want to talk about.
Yeah.
My initial thoughts are pretty much that I love this movie.
Yeah.
I think it might be one of my favorite movies of the year.
Wow.
I don't think. I know,
You
that
know,
it is
yeah.
one of my favorite movies of the year. Yeah, I'm excited to unpack it and talk about it with you because I'm very curious to hear your thoughts.
So as we all know, I'm a little bit more of a heavy-handed critic.
Mhm.
And it's funny because I over criticize the films of the world.
Uh-huh.
And like if it's just seeing like Uncharted with Tom Holland or something
Mhm.
like that, like I just let stuff fly a little bit
Sure.
more and I go into it as like an experience and less criticizing a movie and picking it apart.
Sure.
And as we know, I also am a huge critic of overindulgent
Mm-hmm.
filmmaking,
Mhm.
which we discussed in both The Fablemans and we discussed in Tar,
Mhm.
which I still loved Tar.
Sure.
But there were those scenes that were a little overindulgent and it was just exhausting to watch. And I
Mhm.
think Luca Guadagnino, I was a little bit worried because that self-indulgence was in Call Me By Your Name.
Yes.
Absolutely it was. That
Yes.
is not a palatable movie in the least sense of the word for
No.
like a general audience. I am going to say that if you can handle watching cannibals, this movie is one of the more palatable films
Yes.
I've ever seen. And I
Yes.
think it was really natural. It was really genuine,
Mhm.
oddly heartfelt.
Mhm.
I thought it was thematically bursting at the seams.
Yes. Oh
So
my God.
rich with incredible depth. I
Mhm.
thought the performances were beautiful
Mhm.
across the board. Beautiful and sometimes terrifying.
Yep.
And I'm going to say that this movie is in my top 3 of the year.
It's in my top 3 too.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
It is.
sure.
It is absolutely. You know, from what I've seen from Luca Guadagnino so far, because I have seen Suspiria as well. This is by far the best movie I've seen from him,
Okay.
and I just can't say enough good things about this movie.
I know.
To the point that I think I only have one criticism, which is
Okay.
crazy when it comes to me.
Yeah, that is crazy. Especially like you said, for this type of, like, this is definitely a film.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
Yeah.
And usually it is the films where you tend to get, like you said earlier, like where you tend to get a little bit more critical.
Yeah. And I like
Because-
overanalyze things a little bit.
Because it is a film and
Yeah.
like we have to.
Yeah.
Like we really can't cut a lot of breaks when
Right.
it comes to a film. Like
Yeah.
they're putting themselves out into the world as a film, so like they're also giving us
It's
a
a pretty
platform.
vulnerable moment for like a director or for like a
Yeah.
filmmaker to make something that isn't easy to digest
Mhm.
because you can lose people really quickly.
Yeah.
And so you have to have almost like every element perfectly in place in order for it to be not only art,
Mhm.
but also enjoyable.
Right.
Which there are plenty of movies that are very artful and very masterful, but are not enjoyable to watch.
Yes. Agreed.
And I think this was a beautiful balance of being incredibly beautiful
Mhm.
and masterful, and also just being a really good story that you wanted to watch and see what happens.
Yeah, like so watchable.
Yeah.
And like you said, really held my attention the
Yeah.
entire time.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to sound weird, but I think you might agree with me. It was one of those movies that almost felt like you were watching or like kind of ingesting a symphony,
Yeah.
where it was like you wanted to see up until the very last note played out.
Yeah.
And it was like when it ended, it was just like, damn.
Oh my God, that ending. I
When
can't wait to talk about it in the spoiler
like
section.
it was just
Yeah.
like, wow, like that was a beautiful piece of art.
Yes. And I think it's a shame because I know that it's not a easy watch for people because of the scenes that involve cannibalism. And I think like I just checked Rotten Tomatoes. It's in the low 80s.
I know, which I don't agree with
I
that.
do not agree with it, but I think that it's going to lose people simply for that fact.
It will.
And I understand that. And like, as somebody who is so into horror as much as I am, and for you as someone who's been exposed to horror through me, I think we are able to see why it's used. And like, you know, we're able to watch those scenes without just being disgusted.
Uh-huh.
and we're able to see them as what they are, which I know one of the themes that I picked up on was addiction. Mm-hmm. And I know one of your favorite shows was Intervention.
Yes.
And so when we first started like talking, like when we were in our we're just friends but we're not friends stage, I remember, you know, when you like somebody and they like something, so you like convince yourself that you're also into it. I don't actually like Intervention, but I watched it because I wanted to talk about it with you and impress you.
Right.
And I remember that there were some scenes in Intervention where you watch somebody do their drug of choice and go into a really awful state. And you can see, like, even though they're in this state of euphoria, which the cannibals, when they eat somebody, like they crave it, they need it. And so when they're in this state of euphoria, it's the same thing as like these addicts on Intervention, where like they're experiencing this high, but it's the saddest thing you've ever seen in your life.
And it's like actually the lowest point that they
that
really
they could
ever
possibly ever be.
Yeah.
And I think that they really covered that kind of low and high where they seem so sad that they're doing it, but also struggling with like the need to do it. And I thought that was just wonderful storytelling.
Yeah. And you know, that actually made me think of a scene where Timothée Chalamet's character and Taylor Russell's character are talking kind of about that, about their struggles with it. And he says to her, "Why are you making this harder than it already is?"
Yeah.
And like applying that to like an addiction thing, because she's kind of struggling with the morality of it, I guess, the ethical piece of it. And he's kind of already moved past that. And it's just like, we have to do this. Like, this is just what we have to do. And he's kind of over like the justification process. And she's still kind of in the stage of like trying to justify it and feeling like there isn't a justification for doing it.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, like this is already so fucking hard. Like, why are you making this harder than it is?
I thought it was interesting too, because like if you just made the exact same script, but every scene they ate somebody was a scene of two people doing drugs or one person doing drugs or, you know, talking about doing drugs, I think you could have made the exact same movie, just like a little less effective.
I was gonna say less impactful.
Right.
Honestly, you know, just
right.
I think it needed to be that extreme.
Yeah.
To kind of say it without saying it, you know, because that's what they were trying to do is like, hey, like this is what we're doing here, but like we're gonna take it to the next level and make it the most gruesome thing. It honestly, I think it was more impactful, not just for like shock factor,
right,
but just for like from like an empathy standpoint of like picturing yourself as a person who needs to eat people, right, to like be a person, and like how hard that must be, you know, and how challenging and difficult that is. Seeing that play out was way more impactful, like you said, than like watching someone struggle with like shooting up a drug.
And I think what was really interesting too was that there was another theme that both Timothée Chalamet's character, whose name is Lee, and Taylor Russell's character, whose name is Marin, which is funny because Marin Morris. Both of them struggle with generational trauma and parental abandonment, and it's very similar to like the themes of like what you see an addict go through with their own family. And I also think that I don't know if I'm reading into it a little too much, but I think especially one scene stood out that made me think that it was also a little bit queer coded.
I had that thought too.
I think that addiction was clearly at the forefront.
Sure.
But I think you could put being a cannibal in this world to equate any form of being an outsider, of being on the outside. So like even the very first scene, you know, Taylor Russell is a mixed girl and she's going to this school with a bunch of really rich white girls and she's having trouble acclimating to her environment for that reason, not because she's a cannibal, right, but because she's poor and black.
Right.
So, and I think it also explores being on the outskirts of society because you're gay. And I think because Luca Guadagnino himself is gay, and like I'm sure he put that into the movie and directed it like that, but I think you can tell that it's a little bit symbolizing the vilification of gay people, because it's like, out of all the things you could be, the worst is gay.
Right.
And so like in this world, obviously the worst thing you can be is an eater.
Right.
But the way that other eaters talk about their experience of being an eater made me think like, this is a little queer coded, because
it's a little gay.
The thing that stood out to me the most was the fact that they could smell other eaters. And I was like, this is gaydar.
Yeah.
And like the first scene that Timothée Chalamet and Taylor Russell meet, they're in a convenience store basically. And the looks that they gave each other was that look when you see another gay person in public and you just like have this like moment of like, hey, connection. I'm you and you're me.
Right.
And I'll talk about in the spoiler section a scene that really stood out to me that feels a little bit like this is showing a queer experience. But I thought that was an interesting theme in there too. So it explores so much, where it's like
so much
the experience of addiction, but also the experience of trauma, generational trauma, abandonment, and also looking so desperately for a person or a group of people who will accept you.
I was just going to say, you are. One of the biggest themes that I picked up on, because Hello Counselor was acceptance. Within yourself, and like you said, seeking acceptance from other people, and almost like finding, like you said, either a person or a group of people that you feel like you belong with. And I felt like acceptance and belonging was huge theme, which, like you said, is certainly a part of the queer experience, and is also a part of just the human experience, right? And it was people with addiction.
It was a very human movie.
Yes.
I will say before we get to our popcorn rating that I have to give my one critique.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So my one critique is that there were a couple of scenes where it would cut to a beautiful wide shot of wherever the location was, or it would cut to like the car and they were like inside the car, and they would have little conversations that weren't on camera. And those conversations, were mixed really horribly, so you could hear that they were done in a studio. And the way they mixed them in, it didn't sound like they were in any type of like outdoor environment. Like it sounded very muffled and kind of like they just threw an audio file in there. And also those very specific parts were the only parts of the script that I didn't like, because they were very scripty is the only way I can say it, because like they have these really natural pieces of dialogue and then it would cut to this like extreme wide of a field and then you would hear like, Lee, do you ever think that we would be infinite type, like stuff like that. That's my only critique. If they just took all of those scenes out, if they ripped them out, might be my favorite movie of the year.
I didn't notice either of those things because I'm not an editor. So I think like that makes sense that you picked up on that, but like I certainly didn't. Honestly, if that's your worst critique,
that's a low ball critique.
Pretty generous. I mean, that's your only critique.
I know.
I don't have a critique. I don't have a single thing.
So go ahead and give your little popcorn.
So it's a large popcorn.
Yeah.
It's like 10 large popcorns.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. The more I think about it, it might end up being my favorite movie of the year.
Yeah. It could possibly be mine.
I mean, there's still time left. Yeah. So on December 31st, I'll make my final decision about what my favorite movie of the year is. But
it might be there.
It's up there for sure.
I think for me, it is absolutely a large. I think when I'm struggling to find a critique of a movie, that says something right there.
Does. Yeah.
And I also think that for being such a violent and brutal movie, I thought you were able to handle it pretty well.
I think we've touched on this in like the season of Halloween, but I'll just remind everyone that I don't do gore.
Yeah.
I just simply can't. Like, it's just too much for me.
Not your thing.
It's like, no.
Especially body gore.
Yeah. Like, no. We don't do blood and guts. Like, blood is okay, but guts and like dismemberment and like,
no.
So I'll just say a quick note for anyone, if you feel on the fence about this movie because of the gore, I'm just going to tell you to see it. I'll just tell you, like, I just didn't look at the scenes that were gory.
Yeah, she just looked away when it was too much.
I looked away and the gore was pretty brief, I will say.
There were a couple scenes that were a little long for an average
I guess it
viewer.
felt brief for me because
you
I
weren't
wasn't
watching.
looking at it. Because Abby would just like tap me on the knee when it was over and I would look back up. If you're worried about the gore, it's not the entire movie.
No, it's not.
It was a tasteful amount because I think I only looked away like 3 to 4 times.
Yeah, I think there was only one scene out of the entire movie that I felt he overdid it a little bit.
Okay.
And so for a movie about cannibals to be able to say that, I think the rest of the scenes that involved cannibalism or violence were very purposeful, very meaningful. Yeah. There's a purpose to what they're showing on screen. Right. There was only one scene that I thought took it too far.
I would just hate for somebody to miss out on seeing this movie because they were afraid of seeing gore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like you can just not look.
Yeah.
Or like do like, cause there was parts of it where I was like, but I kind of just want to see like how bad is it kind of thing. Don't let that sway you from seeing the movie, I guess.
Keep an open mind about it, but also like this is incredibly gory, guys. Don't think that like she's underplaying this right now.
Right.
Like if you don't like gore and it makes you really like sick or nauseous, see this movie with somebody who can tap and like tap you in and tap you out. Or if you think that they're about to eat somebody, just close your eyes until you hear them talking again. But I completely agree that it is 100% worth a watch, and I'm really just excited that we got to see this movie. I think it was a wonderful experience.
It really was.
Ready for some spoilers?
Yeah, let's do it.
Welcome back, everybody, to the spoiler portion of the podcast.
The best part.
It's Caitlin's favorite part.
My favorite part.
She doesn't feel restricted.
I don't feel restricted. I can say whatever I want.
You don't know how many times I cut little sections of the podcast where I'm like, you can't say that.
I know. It's just so hard because I'm excited.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the moment that I thought was really like hyper queer coded.
Oh, okay.
And I think you'll agree with me on this one. Was I loved the scene in the diner where the little girl notices them.
Yeah.
Because Lee and Marin are in this diner and they're just eating pancakes and cereal and they're having a conversation. And this little girl looks up at them and you can tell that she smells them. And you can tell that she is also an eater. And I don't know if she like fully knows it yet or she fully, you know, understands it, but she looks at them with almost an admiration. It kind of put me back at like, I know this is weird, but it put me back at Universal when that like little baby gay looked at you.
Oh my God.
And like we were walking through Universal and you and I were like holding hands and you were wearing this like really nice outfit and your hair and makeup done. And I could see her looking at you with like, oh my God, we can grow up and, you know, walk down City Walk in Universal holding hands, you know, and like that kind of admiration. When she looked at them, I was like, this is queer. This is gay. This is, you know,
she wants to be like them.
Yeah.
Like that's what you took away from that scene is like she recognizes something in them that is familiar to her. Yeah. And she like I agree with you. Like it was like she was looking up to them and like she was so fascinated with them. Yeah. And she was just like kind of like looking at them like cool. Like,
well, I think
want that.
When you're in a marginalized community, so if you are, you know, a minority or if you're gay or, you know, a very specific religion that's different than being white, cis, straight, Christian, when you're in a public space, you never really feel like you belong there. I think that theme runs throughout, that these literal vagabonds, like they literally are living out of a truck. They don't feel like they belong anywhere. Right. And you can tell that, you know, eventually as they connect and bond and, you know, eventually fall in love with each other, that they find a home with each other. That experience is so gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
So
you know
gay.
you grow up and you feel so other and you feel so like out of it, and you're like, how am I, like, what am I doing? Like, I don't feel right here, I don't feel right there, I don't, like, where are my people? And then you go to a gay bar for the first time and you're like, holy shit, like this is okay,
is what it feels like.
I get it now.
Yeah.
Or you fall in love and you make that, like, quote unquote home with another person. And so I thought that even though, again, we're talking about cannibals here,
Right.
you're showing just the most beautiful, real human experience of searching for belonging and
Yes.
searching for your people and your home. And that scene just like stood out to me so much.
Definitely. Another scene that stood out to me that's not about the gay thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you know this, but I cried in this movie.
You did.
I did cry in this movie.
Which is funny because the little Gen Z kids that were sitting in front of us, when they left, the one guy goes, I may have cried a little bit.
So I cried kind of a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. You're Caitlin.
But I don't know if you'll know what scene I cried in and what I'm about to talk about. So the scene that I thought was potentially like one of the most beautiful scenes I've ever seen in a movie ever. Was the scene where Marin encourages Lee to confess that he killed and ate his dad.
Yeah.
And fucking Shablagook.
An incredible
In
performance.
that, I mean, in this whole movie was really amazing.
Yeah.
But in that scene, like, that boy acted.
Yeah.
Because in this scene, we're like kind of getting towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
We've established that Marin and Lee are in love. They are having kind of an intimate moment in this beautiful sunset field scene sort of deal. And she gets him to confess to her basically his deepest, darkest secret.
Yeah.
That he killed his father.
Yeah. His abusive father.
His abusive father.
Yeah.
And like ate his whole person.
Yep. Bones and all.
He kind of breaks down as he's confessing this to her and as he's telling her, and she like tells him like, it's okay, you can tell me.
Yeah.
And sort of gives him this space to finally open up. In this moment, you see him be his most vulnerable self. The script, the cinematography.
That was a beautiful. I mean, the cinematography throughout the entire thing was some of the best.
So
I've
beautiful.
ever seen.
But like in this scene, it was just like the way it was lit, the way it was shot. Like it was just. And just him giving his entire person into this scene, it really like hit me.
Yeah.
Like
he went in bones and all.
he did bones and all for that scene. And like it really got to me because I think it touched on so many things. I think it touched on being vulnerable with another person and sharing parts of you that you don't want anyone else to know about, and like not knowing how that other person will take it, but then knowing she accepts him for it and loves him for it. And like you said, that's kind of going along with that theme of finding your person, like finding the home in that person that like even at your worst, this person's also going to love you, like no matter what. And so it's like finding that unconditional love from another person where you may have never found that before. And so you see that whole thing happen. And also, like, I just felt so sad for him. Just gut wrenching. I don't know. Like that scene really stuck with me.
I think the scene that, like, obviously the climax of the movie is going to stick with everyone that sees it. But I think the thing that really stuck with me was that at the end, which we'll talk a little bit more about, you know, what leads up to this, but Timothée Chalamet is dying. He's actively bleeding out from a wound. And he asks her to eat him. And he's like, I need you, like bones and all, like, please eat me. And like saying this out loud, like it sounds ridiculous. But like they bring it up multiple times of, you know, bones and all is like you're consuming, not just like, it's not just eating flesh to like get your jollies off and like you feel good again. It's like taking the whole person, and him begging her to eat him, bones and all, was like, I don't want to be apart from you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it was like, I know I'm dying. Like, I want to be a part of you.
Right.
And I thought that was like, oh my God, so good.
I thought so too. I thought it was just like the climax of the movie, like you said, was also extremely impactful.
Yeah. And horrifying.
Terrifying.
Mark Rylance gave one of the
Yikes.
most disturbing performances I've ever seen.
I'm so scared of him, and like also predators and like pedophilia almost was kind of a theme also.
Yeah.
Which is weird. So like, is like Guadagnino okay? Was he like preyed upon?
Probably.
Because like
he seems troubled.
We're now 2 for 2 on the predator shit. So like, what's going on? That was terrifying.
Yeah, Mark Rylance plays a character named Sully, who literally the first note in my phone is, why does Sully have such a fatty?
he is double cheeked up
on a Thursday afternoon at the movie theater,
chewing on some people.
Literally has the biggest ass I've ever seen on a man.
Dumpy.
And I was like, is this like, did they make him look a little like misshapen, or is this actually Mark Rylance? Because if not, he's packing heat in the back.
He sure is.
But he basically plays a cannibal or an eater in this world, that his rule is that he waits until people die before that he eats them. So he does not kill somebody.
He never killed somebody.
He's never killed somebody. He waits till they die. So he literally, this is so fucking creepy, he stalks dying people because he can smell when they're starting the dying process, and then he eats them. So he like breaks into an old lady's home that fell on the ground and is stuck, and he's just waiting there for her to die.
Yeah.
And
so like a legit predator.
Yeah. And what's interesting was that he felt like he was so morally good for that. But really it was almost more predatorial than on the opposite side, which was Lee, which Lee goes after like scummy people. Where he's like
assholes.
Yeah,
like
I'm gonna take
people
you out.
like his dad.
Yeah. And so it was like we had the one person that's kind of preying upon sick, injured, old, dying people. And we had the person that was kind of vigilante eating. And then Taylor Russell's character is like learning from both of them. And she's just so confused of like, what do I do? But Sully's character becomes obsessed with Taylor Russell. And she's like his special girl basically. And he follows her and
literally stalks
her across the country and is obsessive over her. And in that final scene where he basically is like admitting to her that like he's been wanting to eat her for like months now. And then, you know, Lee comes in and like tries to save her and ends up getting, you know, injured. But I was so terrified of Sully throughout the entire movie. Not just that end scene, which was crazy, but what a performance. What a terrifying performance.
Seriously. Really disturbing. Like, it made you feel very uncomfortable.
And there's something about a man in a braid that's always a little bit, unless you're indigenous, like, don't have a braid.
We don't do a man with a braid.
Like the little skinny
and like
braid.
The fedora.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just like everything about him was giving ick.
Yeah. It was like this long, gross, like rat tail braid. And then he like collects people's hair and braids it after he kills them.
Into like a mega braid.
Which, if you think about that, he's only killed women because he's taken the braids. And so like he is very predatorial and disgusting and like honestly more scary than like the two other vagabonds that they meet that are like, we like to eat people.
They're just like hill people.
Yeah.
Like
the hills have eyes.
Yeah, like the guy's just like wearing overalls with like nothing underneath. And it's like, okay, you're just like a wood creature. It's fine. Now that we've gushed about the entire movie and how much we love it and the things we didn't like about it and things that scared us, I have like just this question, like a QT&A.
Okay.
How are they eating the bones?
I don't know because they don't show it.
Because like they say bones and all like 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And I was like, but like how?
Right. I don't know if maybe they like are implying that because they're eaters, they're able to do that maybe.
Okay. That was my thought,
Yeah.
was like because they do this, like they can like consume bones.
Yeah.
But like, yikes, first of all.
I know.
Second of all, why? I don't know. Like, I just thought like that was just like the one thing where I was like, but why did it have to be the bones? Like,
right.
You do you. Eat their organs, eat their flesh, their muscles, but like not the bones.
I like that that's where you draw the line. You're like, it's okay if you...
It's just like so hard. It's so crunchy. I don't know. Like, I was just like, my brain wasn't processing how that's possible.
I don't think you're supposed to
You're just
process
supposed,
it. You're just
to
supposed
suspend reality, I guess.
Yeah.
And like, they just eat the bones.
Yeah. They just pop them like little potato chips.
Ew, now I don't want to eat potato chips.
Shut up. You will.
I'll probably eat potato chips like as soon as we stop recording. TBH.
That does it for us. Bones and all.
I still feel like there's more things I could say, but like we have to cut it off.
We have to cut it off.
We have to be done.
If you do see this movie, text Caitlin, message Caitlin.
Please. I still want to talk about it.
She still wants to talk about it.
I'll never stop talking about it.
She'll be talking about this movie forever.
Yes.
We are going to do just the most dramatic theme shift, the most dramatic genre shift we could possibly. But you know what? That's what makes our little podcast fun to do, is that we don't do the same type of movie. You know?
Yeah, and we don't take ourselves too seriously here.
So
we've made that clear from the start.
We're switching it up next week, and we're going to ring in the Christmas season with a movie that we promised quite a few people on Instagram that we would review. We are going to drop a little episode on Lindsay Lohan's Falling for Christmas.
I can't wait.
Caitlin is a Christmas movie connoisseur.
I'm a Lindsay Lohan.
We are both Lindsay Lohan fans. We are so happy she's back in action. Looks healthy and amazing.
Looks great.
So that episode will drop next Friday. We are so excited about it because I think it'll be a fun one.
I'm excited.
It'll probably be spoilers the whole time.
It'll be a full spoiler. Yeah, like it's just a Christmas movie.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about it the whole time. So we're very excited about that. Again, if you can see Bones and All, please go see it. Keep an open mind. It is way better than the 83% it is getting.
Dude, for real.
Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us on the ride home.